Hey there, it's Paige here from the Impact Copywriter and the Sales Funnel Shop. And today I'm going to show you how to set up a simple Work With Me automation. Now, this automation is great for people like freelancers and service providers and even coaches who work with clients one-on-one and want to sort of automate that inbound lead process. So getting people, from becoming a stranger all the way into submitting an application or booking a call to talk to you. So in this video, I'm going to show you kind of the big picture. So what does the blueprint look like and how does the automation work? In other words, like how does that funnel flow? And then I'm going to walk you through an example automation, and then we're actually going to build it step by step. At the high level, this is what the simple Work With Me sequence looks like. So we're going to set it up so that someone joins the sequence inside another automation. So when they finish, for example, if they've downloaded some sort of training resource like free training, lead magnet or freebie, or maybe they watched a webinar and now you want to trigger them to go through the Work With Me sequence. Or maybe, they just finished a free course and you want to trigger the Work With Me sequence. So typically people are going to start getting these emails after they've shown some sort of interest in your brand by downloading a freebie or opting in to watch a free training or something like that. So how it works is this. Someone finishes another automation, and inside that automation, we tell our email service provider to start the Work With Me sequence. So then they're going to get, one email. And the next day, they're going to get another email. The next day, they're going to get another email, and so on, until they reach a goal, which is to submit the application. So if you're doing a screening process, most likely your emails are going to direct to your application page to where they fill in some information about themselves. And then from there, once they fill in that application, they're going to go to a thank you page where you can just tell them what to expect next. And then it kind of goes not necessarily offline, but it's not automated. So someone on your team or yourself, if you're working as a solopreneur, is going to screen that application and decide whether or not they actually get to book a call. And then you can send them to your online booking or do that booking back and forth, however you do it in your business. And then that results in a phone call. So that's more of a qualified lead. Now, if you're just starting out and you're not yet using a screening process because you're trying to get on as many calls as possible with potential prospects, then you may direct the emails directly to an online booking page. So you're reducing that friction. You don't want to put up barriers to get on the phone to see if you could potentially help them and y'all could be a good fit. So in that case, you might send them directly to an online booking page. So a typical Work With Me sales sequence may be anywhere from 5 to 10, 11, 12 emails, depending on what kind of messages you need to cover. But for the purposes of this demo, we're just going to set up 5 emails. Just know that the amount of emails will vary depending on the kinds of messages you need to address in order to get people to take that step to go to the application page and submit that application. So just keep in mind here that our 5 email placeholder is not a hard and fast rule. It doesn't mean you need only 5 emails or you have to have 5 emails. It's just demonstrating here that we will have a series of multiple emails. So once someone submits the application, they have effectively achieved the goal that we set for them for this automation, for this funnel, and then your sales team or you take over with the more hands-on type of prospecting. So we can pretty much automate everything from the start action, which we're triggering in another automation, through sending the emails, through having the application page set up, through getting them to the thank you page, which can be automated, and through recognizing that they have achieved that goal so that the automation doesn't keep sending them emails. All right, now let's look at a real example. So here I have set up a skeleton for a new sales page review promo sequence that I'm working on. And we're going to keep it really simple. We're not going to add in a bunch of segmenting pathways and stuff. We're going to keep it really, really, really simple. You can always add complexity as you run your automation and decide that you need complexity. But I don't recommend adding or too many moving parts before you have it set up, because simple is always better when simple is enough. So let's talk about what you'll need to make this automation work. You're going to need emails, obviously, because you're going to want to send them that content, that copy that gets them excited to submit an application, with the CTA that's leading to that application page. So based on our blueprint, we have 5 emails. You can see 5 emails set up here. You're also going to need wait triggers because you don't want people getting all the emails at once. You want to add some cushion between the emails. So typically in a sales sequence, we do see a wait of about 1 day between emails. Now at the end, because we realize that, people might take a few days before they take action after getting the last email, I've added a wait action of about a week. So about 7 days before this automation decides whether or not this goal has been reached and if it ends or not. Because I want to be able to see that in the subscriber record that they have achieved that goal. So that's why I'm letting it wait for about 7 days before the automation goes, has this person achieved this goal? If not, then we're just going to end the automation. So I want a chance for that subscriber to be able to be tagged, if they act within that 7-day period. Now, if they act outside of that 7-day period, they're still going to become a lead. They're still filling in the application. That's great. I just want to have record of it because they won't be in the automation in order to get tagged with the goal. So that brings us to our third core action that we need is our goal. So how do we know to stop sending them emails when they've effectively submitted the application? So how goals work in ActiveCampaign is that anytime someone achieves certain parameters that we set up, so in this case, anytime they join the sales page questionnaire kind of leads list, which I have set up in my list dashboard, then the contact is going to automatically jump to the goal. So if they submit the form here at email 2, and so it recognizes that they submitted the form, they're not going to get email 3, 4, and 5 because it's not necessary because they've already achieved the goal. They're going to jump straight to the goal, be tagged, as that they submitted that goal. So that's just helpful for the back end, right? And then the automation is going to end. So that's how we ensure that people don't keep getting emails when they've already achieved the goal that we've set out for them. The final piece that we're going to need is an end this automation action, and that simply tells ActiveCampaign that a subscriber has successfully completed an automation, and that's just helpful from our back end as well. So what happens if someone doesn't submit the application, while they're in the wait period here? So they don't submit, within the first 5 emails, and they also don't submit the application in the 7-day waiting period. All that happens is, and we can customize this depending on how you set up your goal. So you can have the automation kind of wait until they submit it, until all these conditions are met, or you can just have the automation end. And so right now I've had this set up that if they don't meet the goal, when the 7 days are up, then the automation just ends and they'll be tagged as they've completed the automation, but they won't be tagged with the goal because they didn't meet the goal. Now, before we move on to talk about how we actually set up the automation, and I'll walk you through that, let's hop back over to our blueprint and talk about kind of the different types of tools that you're going to need, because you just watched me walk through a email service provider that has an automation feature. So that is tool number 1 that you will need in order to send these emails and automate the process. You will need an email service provider, something like ActiveCampaign, that allows you to do automations. And preferably allows you to build them in a very visual way because it's a lot easier. So the other thing you're going to need is some way to collect information and to make an application. So you might use something like Typeform, which is what I use for different purposes in my business, or you might use something like Google Forms, which is a free tool that you can use. Whatever you use, you want to make sure that it is compatible with Zapier, because most likely you're going to need to set up a Zapier Zap so that when someone submits the application, and it tells ActiveCampaign and either adds them as a contact or as a subscriber and adds them to a specific list. And so I have my goal set up that once they join that specific list, then the goal is achieved. So that's how I make the automation, multiple tools talk together. So just to recap, you will need an email service provider with automation features, preferably with a visual builder. You will need some way to build applications. And if you want to make those really nice and streamlined, then you can embed them. You'll need a way to build landing pages. So if you want to embed the application on your website, which is what I do, so that it's always on like your domain/start or your domain/apply. And you can build like sales pages out around that application as well. So you may need a landing page builder if that's the strategy you want to use, but otherwise you just need a way to build applications. And then you're probably going to need Zapier to make sure that those tools connect together. And then, of course, if you do the online booking strategy, then you'll need an online booking tool. I personally use and love Calendly, but there are a lot of options out there. All right, now let's build the simple work with me sequence that we just demoed. So I'm in ActiveCampaign. I'm in the automations part of the dashboard. I have just clicked create an automation and it's going to launch the wizard. So to start, I'm going to start from scratch and select continue. So if you remember, we're going to trigger this automation inside another automation, so we don't need a trigger for it. So we're going to start without a trigger. I'm going to exit out of this window here. Now, the first thing I want you to do is to name your automation. And it doesn't matter how you name it as long as it is clear and descriptive for you, so that from the back end, you clearly know what this automation is for. So you can see in the previous example, I named this as sales page review promo emails because that is the purpose of this automation. For our demoing purposes, I've named this work with me. And then I've left a kind of a placeholder for the type of service and then demo, because for me, this is a demo. On your end, just make sure that you name it in a way that's clear and descriptive. So we've already covered that we don't need a start trigger. The next thing we're going to do is add emails. So under sending options, click and drag send an email. We will have to create an email to get started. Naming your emails, also make sure the names are clear and descriptive. I usually use some sort of kind of code. So here I'm using like work with me, WWM1, because we're going to do a series of 5 emails. And then with a colon, and once I input my email copy and I know kind of what the purpose of this email is going to be, then I will actually add kind of some extra description here. Now, each time you create a new email, ActiveCampaign is going to launch kind of the email setup wizard, which starts with selecting a template. For the purpose of this demo, we're just going to set up draft emails. So we're not going to go through this whole process. I like to set up emails after I've put together the full automation, because then I can just focus on inputting the email content, formatting properly, checking the links and all that. So it's very focused. But the first phase for me is to set up all the email placeholders as draft emails. So to do that, all we have to do is save and exit, and we don't continue with setting up the templates yet. As a side note though, when you first start using ActiveCampaign, I do recommend that you go in and spend just a few minutes setting up your template. That will save you a lot of time moving forward that you won't have. So you won't have to pull in design elements and tweak things every time that you create a new email, or even send a new email newsletter, email broadcast. So it's going to save you a lot of time moving forward using ActiveCampaign. You can see here we have the first email selected, and we're going to save. Perfect. Now we have a draft email set up and acting as a placeholder here in our automation. I'm going to follow that same exact process for emails 2 through 5. Perfect. Now that I have all 5 draft emails set up, I'm going to move into adding my wait actions. So we will not add a wait action to the beginning. We're only going to add them between the emails and then between the final email and the goal. So under conditions and workflow, click and drag wait. We're going to wait for a specified period of time, and we're going to wait for 1 day. All right, I'm going to follow the same process to add wait actions in between the other emails. Now that we have 1 day wait actions between all the emails, so 1 through 4, or 1 through 5 technically, we're going to add one final wait action after email 5, and we're going to wait for 7 days. So you can either wait for 7 days or you can select weeks. I'm going to make it easy so I don't have to select extra stuff and just say 7 days. The next thing we need to add to our automation is our goal. So under conditions and workflow, select goal and drag it in. So name this goal, make sure it's clear and descriptive. I'm going to say submitted application, and if you have multiple applications, then of course be more descriptive of what type of application or for what service it's for. You need to set up your parameters. So for automations, I use lists like buckets to classify people. So it makes it easier to, define goals, to start automations, to end automations, to segment people between those automations. So I have a list set up for leads associated with specific applications. So that's how I'm going to define my goal. Now, there are other options. You can define goals based on tags. So when someone submits an application, then you add a specific tag. Or, there are lots of other options. So you can browse through all the options you have available, depending on how you're using ActiveCampaign, what other tools you're using, and what makes the most sense for your business. But for my purposes, I'm going to define this based on whether or not they're in a list. So let me just type in list here. So we're going to say they're in list, and then we're going to select the list that they're in. So we're going to say this one's for like my generic project questionnaire. So in the example, you'll see that I have it set up for it's for sales page reviews specifically. So I have a specific list that are for leads for the sales page review. Select the list that you want the goal to use. Save. All right, so once someone is in the list for leads from the project questionnaire, they're going to jump to this goal and they're going to be tagged as submitted the application. And because this goal is at the end of the automation, it doesn't matter what you select here. So we're just going to keep the default setting. And if the contact does not meet the goal, we're going to end the automation. Now you can also choose to wait until the conditions are met, and that will just keep someone at the end of the automation until they submit the application. I don't see any reason to do that for this automation. You can also, decide that it continues anyway. So even if they haven't met the goal, they do whatever comes after the goal. In this automation, it also doesn't matter because the goal is the last action in the automation before the automation ends. But if you had other actions happening after the goal and you didn't want people who didn't meet the goal to go through those actions, then you want to make sure you select that if they don't meet the goal, then you end the automation, so that they don't get those follow-up actions that you have intended for people who do meet a specific goal. All right, now we have our goal set up for our application submissions, and the final action we want to add to this automation is simply to end this automation. So under conditions and workflow, you'll find the end this automation. Just click on and drag. Perfect. Now we have our email placeholders that are currently set up as drafts. We have our wait actions so that people don't get emails all at once. We have our goal set up so we know when someone submits an application, they'll be pulled to the end so they don't continue to get emails when it's not necessary. We have a longer buffer wait action between the final email and the goal, so we give them some time to act, right? And then we have our end this automation action, which simply tells us that someone's completed an automation. So the next step would be to set up your emails, make sure your formatting's correct, send test emails to yourself, make sure all the links work, that they go to that application page if that's what your strategy is, or they go to that booking page if that's what your strategy is. Once the automation is ready, all you need to do to make it active is to click the active button here at the top. Once you have your Work With Me automation set up, you can trigger it from inside other automations so that you connect those automations together and essentially kind of automate your inbound lead process. So people go from strangers to applying to work with you. So I'm inside my free course funnel demo automation that we set up in another video. But you'll notice here at the bottom, towards the end of the automation, I have an action that says enter an automation. And so simply to connect two automations together, all you do is drag in a start an automation action, and you can find that underneath conditions and workflow, and it's called start an automation. So you simply click and drag that into the automation that you're modifying. And once you're inside that action, you can select which automation you want to trigger at that point. So for our purposes, we're going to trigger our Work With Me demo. Select apply and save. And now once someone reaches the end of this free course funnel and they get the final lesson, this automation will wait for 1 day before triggering the new automation. So subscribers will be jumping, from this automation into a more sales-focused Work With Me automation. And that is how you take people through different stages of the sales funnel, where they go from stranger to lead or stranger to subscriber by opting in for something free that you're offering. And once you've delivered on what you promised in that free offer, then you can move them into more of the sales focused part of becoming a client, which in that first step usually is to apply to work with you or to book a consult call or something similar. That is our simple Work With Me automation. Good luck setting up yours.